probably won't listen. I'm not gonna listen. I'm gonna skip it. I don't need to hear that. I feel like it would be like listening to a tape of my grandpa having said, no, I'm good. I'm good. Hello beautiful people, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking to watch this video. Today's video is going to be another episode of Makeup and History, yeah. If you're new here, my name is Cydnee, and Makeup and History is a series here on my channel where I put on makeup while talking about a historical event, a scandal from the past, or just a person that fascinates me. In my last video, we talked about Malcolm X and the events that led to his death. I have seen some comments from you guys saying that there have been updates to this story recently. I need to look into that. But if you haven't seen this video yet, go and check it out. It's a good one. For today's video, we're going to be talking about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his secret life, the severe harassment he dealt with at the hands of the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover, my fave. Just kidding, J. Edgar Hoover is not my fave. I hate that guy. We're also going to talk about what Martin Luther King Jr. was planning when he was assassinated and may have been the reason he was assassinated. All very interesting things that I didn't know. I didn't know any of this. A lot of really interesting things, some upsetting things. We're gonna get into it today. We're going to talk about it. Before we jump into today's story, we do have a sponsor, so let's hear from that sponsor. I'm really excited about it. The sponsor for today's video is BetterHelp, and I'm so thrilled to be working with them because it is a service that I use. I signed up with BetterHelp earlier this year because I was just really struggling, you guys, like struggling. If you've been feeling like something is interfering with your happiness or you're having trouble with achieving your goals, then maybe BetterHelp will also work for you. I have always been an advocate for therapy and talking to professionals to help you with some of life's problems. Life can be very traumatic. Even the most mundane things sometimes can be very traumatizing. I have found through BetterHelp that sometimes it's really helpful to just talk your ideas out, talk out your thoughts, especially if they're professional and they can offer you advice that you can apply to your life. BetterHelp will assess your needs and then match you with your own licensed professional therapist, and you can start communicating with them within 48 hours, which is very quick. That's 2 days, folks. And one of the best things about BetterHelp is you can start at home. You don't have to go anywhere. You can do a video call, you can do texting, you can do just a phone call. You can get your mind right from the comfort of your toilet seat, if you want. I don't know what you're doing. Visit betterhelp.com/Cydnee, that's better HELP, and join over 1 million people already taking control over their mental health with an experienced professional. Check the link in the description box for more information if you are curious. Okay, now we're going back to the video. Let's go. Thank you so much to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. I love BetterHelp. If you guys don't know, I do have some playlists on my channel talking about self-development and mental health, so you can also check those videos out, but definitely get some therapy. We could all use a little therapy, honestly. Therapy for everyone. If you haven't already and you would like to, please subscribe to my channel. Turn on the notification bell so that you're notified every time I upload a new video. And yeah, let's get into this tea. It's hot today, y'all. It's hot. It's hot tea today. Oh. All of the products and everything that I'm using will be listed down in the description box below as usual. I also always link all of the sources where I find my information. If you are familiar with the story, please feel free to fact check me down in the comments below, as well as include any additional information that I don't say or I might not even know. And I shouldn't have to say this, but I feel some people do need a reminder. Don't be rude. I welcome corrections. I know that I'm not always right. Sometimes I'm wrong. Correct me, but don't be rude. You don't have to be rude. You can say what it is you want to say without being rude. All right, let's begin. In 2017, the government released over 600 new documents. Within the hundreds of documents, historians were shocked when they found a 20-page document from the FBI about Martin Luther King Jr. The document was dated March 12, 1968, just 3 weeks before Martin Luther King was assassinated. And within the document, the FBI was making claims about Martin Luther King that, if true, would mean he was an accomplice to a crime. The claims being made in the document were wild, and even more wild were the ways in which the FBI was able to gather the information to make those claims. Not gonna lie, I was very upset. I'm upset at myself for looking into this further. I really am. Honestly. Some of these things I could have gone my entire life without knowing, but some of the things I found to be very interesting. We're going to talk about all of it today. So to find out what was in the documents and how the FBI got this information, let's get in our time machine and go back to 1963. I'm just going to finish this one eyebrow and then we'll go in the time machine. I know time traveling with just one eyebrow is risky, but that's a risk I'm willing to take, all right? It's going to be all right. Put your seatbelt on. All right, folks, we're here. We're in 1963. By 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was already one of the country's most prominent leaders in the fight for equality for Black Americans and civil rights. He was a very intelligent and charismatic leader, and he was most well known for his strategy of nonviolence. All of his protests and demonstrations were nonviolent. He was adamant that anyone who was involved with him was nonviolent. You couldn't provoke any violence, you couldn't react to any violence, even if you were met with violence. And they were met with a lot of violence. Protesters were beat, jailed, hosed, had dogs sicked on them, and all these people were asking for was to be treated civilly. Be civil, folks. Dr. King specifically was the victim to a lot of very dangerous, life-threatening attacks. His house was bombed, he was beaten, he was hit in the face, he was spit on, he was stabbed. Somebody stabbed him. But Dr. King never retaliated. He never fought back or striked back. He always led by the non-violent strategy. He was like, we're not violent, no one's violent. Every hateful act should be met with love. Do you know how strong of a person you have to be to meet every violent act with love? Someone hits you in the face and you react with love? If you hit me, I'm gonna hit you back. If you hit me, you better hope there's not a weapon within hand's reach, because I'm gonna hit you and I can't guarantee that I'm gonna stop. So don't hit me.
This one young lady came up to Dr. King, just spitting in his face, calling him all kinds of names. And he said, you know, you're much too beautiful to be so mean. When we came back through there, she came out of the crowd again and went up to him and said, I'm sorry. I never should have been so rude.
He was getting spit on and reacting with love. That takes a lot of strength and patience, because you spit on me, I'm gonna spit on your mother. Don't spit on me. Sorry guys, I'm getting like emotional thinking about it. Don't do that. Those who fought alongside Martin behaved in the same way. Even if they were met with violent attacks, words, criticisms, they always reacted with love. They were non-violent, and they really lived by that.
We still have the attitude of love. We still have the method of passive resistance, and we are still insisting emphatically that violence is self-defeating, that he who lives by the sword will perish by the sword.
Any American that was paying attention and reasonably intelligent saw what was happening and thought, this is not right. Black Americans should not be treated like this. Something needs to change. On August 28th, 1963, 260,000 Americans of all races participated in the March on Washington. The March on Washington is now known as an historic event, but then it was a really, really big deal. And Martin was scheduled to speak for only 4 minutes. However, he went on speaking for 16 minutes, giving his iconic I Have a Dream speech, and the crowd went crazy. They loved it. I mean, we still love it. It's one of the most iconic speeches that ever happened.
This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, my country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Let freedom ring, and if America is to be a great nation, this must become true.
After the March on Washington, Martin became one of the most popular figures in the country. He received a lot of positive attention. He also received some not so positive attention from the FBI and the American government, of course. On August 30th, 1963, just 2 days after the March on Washington, the number 2 in charge at the FBI, a man named William Sullivan, writes a memo in which he declares Martin Luther King Jr. the world's most dangerous Negro, and he says that the FBI needs to use all of their resources to destroy him. This is an actual FBI memo that they wrote after the I Have a Dream speech. Can you imagine listening to the I Have a Dream speech and saying, yeah, he's dangerous, we need to destroy him? That's a very dramatic thing to say. We need to destroy him. J. Edgar Hoover sees the memo, and of course he agrees. He's like, yeah, he seems dangerous, we need to destroy him. But J. Edgar Hoover also believed that any civil rights leader or anyone who wanted civil rights was a communist, So the FBI begins looking into Martin's life and trying to find any reason to justify that he's a dangerous man, dangerous Negro. And what they discover is that he's friends with a man named Stanley Levison. And Stanley is a known communist. He already has known ties to the Communist Party. So the FBI sees that Stanley and Martin are friends, and then they assume Martin is a communist as well because he's friends with a guy who's a communist. So that makes him a communist. When the FBI finds this out, they go to the Attorney General, Robert Kennedy, and they ask for permission to start surveying Martin Luther King Jr. Robert Kennedy and his brother, John F. Kennedy, who was the president at the time, were known supporters of Martin Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Movement, so instead of granting the FBI permission right away, they say that they're going to talk to Martin and tell him that he needs to cut ties with Stanley Levison. So John F. Kennedy has a meeting with Martin, and he's like, hey man, so you have to stop being friends with Stanley because J. Edgar Hoover doesn't like him. He says he's a communist and you have to stop hanging out with him. Martin's like, okay, what, he's gonna tell the president no? No, that's my friend, no. So he agrees to stop being friends with Stanley Levison, but he doesn't actually take it seriously. He actually really liked Stanley Levison. They were really close friends, so he was upset by this, and he didn't really see it as like a dangerous thing. So he tells the president that he's gonna stop being friends with him, but he doesn't actually stop being friends with him. So the FBI is listening to Stanley's phone calls. They wiretapped his phone, and they discovered that Stanley and Martin are still talking, and this sends J. Edgar Hoover into a rage because he was told that Martin was going to stop being friends with Stanley, but Martin didn't. J. Edgar Hoover is really upset by this, and he feels that this justifies his belief that Martin is not a good person because he lied about not being friends with Stanley anymore. I mean, I don't know, I wasn't there, but J. Edgar Hoover sounds like a little bitch. The FBI learns that the way Martin and Stanley were still communicating was through their mutual friend, Clarence Jones. And Clarence was the speechwriter and attorney for Martin, so he and Martin were together all the time. So Martin would use Clarence's phone to make phone calls often, and the FBI starts listening, thinking that they're going to hear Martin and Stanley planning some communist takeover, but what they hear instead is Martin talking about his extramarital affairs. After the FBI hears that Martin is cheating on his wife, their investigation immediately goes from trying to prove he's a communist to trying to get information about his extramarital affairs, like immediately. Almost makes you wonder if it was ever about communism to begin with. It wasn't. Martin traveled frequently for work, and he would often stay in various hotels in different cities. So the FBI began learning what hotels he was going to stay in next, and then they would go to the hotel and ask what room he was staying in, or they would influence the staff to give him a specific room, and then they would go in the room and bug it. They would put recording devices everywhere so they could listen to everything that was happening in the hotel rooms. They would also request rooms that were near Martin's room so they could have physical presence in the investigation. And in some cases, they would make a way so that they could peep into his room. Like, they could physically see into his room as well as hear everything that was going on. Yes, that's very creepy. Imagine if they didn't find anything. Like, what if he was just going into his hotel room and sleeping? You're just gonna sit and watch him sleep? That's creepy. He definitely wasn't just sleeping. He was doing a lot more than sleeping in the hotel rooms. Oof. The FBI begins this very unethical investigation, believing that they're going to find Martin with his mistress. One woman, maybe two women. The FBI records Martin engaging in sexual activities with over 40 women. 40 plus women. They record him having orgies and drunken parties where there was like sexual activity going on with more than one person. In the notes, they said it was natural and unnatural sexual activities taking place, which I don't really know what that means. I don't know what that means. What does that mean? I don't want to know what that means. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. They also record that Martin is having at least 3 long-term affairs outside of his marriage. One of these long-term affairs allegedly is with folk singer Joan Baez. The two of them were seen together quite often. Another alleged long-term affair was with a woman named Georgia Powers. She was also known for working with Dr. Martin Luther King in civil rights, and I think she served as a senator in Kentucky. Correct me if I'm wrong. She would later write a memo confirming this, confirming that she did in fact have a relationship with Martin, and that she was the one who spent the last night with him the day before he was killed. Another long-term affair that the FBI documented was with a woman whose name they didn't say. She was a girlfriend that he had in Los Angeles, and allegedly he had a child with this woman that he knew about. The child looked exactly like him, and that he was supporting the child. Martin had no idea that the FBI was listening to his private life at all. He had no clue. And the FBI did this without his knowledge for 2 years, from 1963 to 1965. The behavior of being a womanizer and sexual philanderer was not uncommon for men of great power and influence from that time or today, honestly. It wasn't a rare thing, and J. Edgar Hoover knew this. He had recorded evidence of pretty much every prominent politician cheating on his wife. in the 50s and 60s, like all of them. When it came to finding this information out about Martin Luther King, however, Hoover kind of took it personally. Like, for whatever reason, he was like especially upset by this. In 1964, Martin was announced as the recipient for the Nobel Peace Prize. He's now being recognized as a symbol of peace and justice all over the world for his nonviolent strategy and demonstrations in America.
I do not consider this merely an honor to me personally, but a tribute to the discipline, wise restraint, and majestic courage of the millions of gallant Negroes and white persons of goodwill.
When J. Edgar Hoover learns that Martin Luther King will be receiving the Nobel Peace Prize, he is infuriated. He's like, ah. He releases a public statement in which he says Martin Luther King is the world's most notorious liar. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. They're just so dramatic. Like, he's the most dangerous Negro. He's the most notorious liar. Hoover's statement gets national attention and is printed all over American headlines, but no one really knows why Martin's a liar. Like, he can't say why he's a liar because no one knows about his personal life. Only Hoover and the FBI know that. But he would publicly attack Martin in the media more than once. He would make it known to the world that he did not like Martin Luther King Jr. When Martin is asked to respond to the statements made by J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, he's genuinely concerned. He's like, I don't know why he's attacking me. I really don't.
I was shocked and greatly surprised that Mr. Hoover would make such an unwarranted and vicious accusation.
He still doesn't know that they are following his every move, so he genuinely doesn't understand this. But instead of retaliating against J. Edgar Hoover and, like saying something back, he instead says that the FBI should be more focused on solving the crimes that are being perpetrated against black people.
In spite of the fact that 4 unoffending innocent Negro girls were brutally murdered in a church in Birmingham, Alabama, not a single arrest has been made.
Why are you guys looking at me? Can you guys solve the crimes? What is going on? He doesn't know yet that they're watching him. They're watching everything. Clarence Jones, who again is Martin's speechwriter and lawyer, has suspicions that the FBI might be listening in to their conversations, and he brings this up to Martin multiple times. He brings it up so much that Martin starts to get annoyed. He's like, man, they're not listening to us. Like, they have better things to do than to listen to us. Stop saying that, please. Clarence is like, fine, all right, I'll chill, but I'm pretty sure they're listening. And Martin's like, they're not listening. In early 1965, Martin realizes that Clarence is right. The FBI is listening to their phone calls, and they're doing a lot more than that. Martin receives an anonymous letter sent to his family home, and included with the letter is an audio tape. Martin wasn't home at first when the tape and the letter arrived, so Coretta opens it, and she plays the tape, and hears that the tape is a recording of 2 people in the bed doing what the adults do when they're in the bed sometimes. Ow. She calls Martin, who's at his office, and tells him, like, hey, somebody just sent this weird tape of 2 people having sex. Like, what is this? Can you come get this? So Martin goes home and reads the letter, and the letter basically says, you're a terrible person, you're an imbecile, and you're going to be exposed if you don't do what needs to be done, implying that Martin should kill himself. This is what was written. There is but one way out. You better take it before your fraudulent, abnormal behavior is bared to the nation. Or in other words, kill yourself. When Coretta first hears the tape, she doesn't automatically assume that it's Martin in the tape. I think she was used to getting strange things sent to the house all the time, so she doesn't automatically assume it's Martin. However, after she sees his reaction to it, she's like, I would be so pissed. Receiving this tape caused a lot of problems in their marriage, of course. Coretta already felt that Martin wasn't fulfilling his husband duties. He was never home. She was once quoted saying that it would be an exaggeration to say that he spent more than 10 hours at home. And they had 4 children, so she was the primary parent taking care of 4 children while he was away working all the time.
Work out a way for her to get there, being a mother and 4 children is not easy for her to get away all the time, but I'm sure that on this occasion, she will be accompanying me.
And while his work was noble, it still is not, like, I would be pissed. I'm like, I didn't have these kids by myself. And then to find out that not only is he gone all the time, but while he's gone, he's entertaining other women. Many other women. No. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. I don't know what I would do in that situation. I don't think my husband ever wants to find out, though. Sorry guys, that was crazy Cyd coming out for a bit. She's back. I put her back. It's really unfortunate. I feel so bad for her. I feel like this was something that a lot of women had to deal with, especially if you didn't work, if your husband was the primary financial provider. I think it only makes it worse if your husband is as famous as Martin was during that time and today. Ugh.
Know that I'm with you and that I am with my husband.
And she was constantly supporting him publicly. Like, it's upsetting. I would have been pissed. Martin had suspected that the FBI's were behind sending the tape and the letter, but he couldn't prove it. However, later we would confirm that it was the FBI who sent it because they kept a copy of it. A copy of the letter that was sent to Martin's house telling him to kill himself was found in the desk of the number 2 in charge, William Sullivan, and he claimed that it was planted there by J. Edgar Hoover. He said J. Edgar Hoover, this was his idea. He told me about it and I said it was a bad idea, but he did it anyway. Why would you write a letter telling someone to kill themselves and then keep the first draft? Why would you keep a copy? Apparently, J. Edgar Hoover was known as a master blackmailer, so he would do this kind of thing often. Receiving the tape and the letter was very damaging to Martin's personal life, but he was also terrified that it was going to get out to the public and ruin his reputation. This was a very difficult period for him. He was very, very emotionally disturbed and depressed. Finding out that the FBI was doing this to him was really, really disturbing. Like, he had no idea. And you send it to my wife? Tell me to kill myself? It's upsetting, it is. Regardless of knowing that the FBI was blackmailing him, Martin continued his work as usual. He still believed in what he was fighting for and fighting to achieve. So even though he knew that the FBI could expose him, he continued working and pushing forward. Fortunately for him, no one published the story of his sexual misconduct. It just never came out. I'm not sure why that is, but it never came out. So it was fantastic for him at the time. But the anxiety that it would come out never left, and he now knew that the FBI was following him everywhere, so it made him a little paranoid. Martin was not going to let this stop him from fighting for equality. He continued the fight.
Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children.
Continued the good fight. He also continued cheating. In 1965, Lyndon B. Johnson, who is now the president, signs the Voting Rights Act, which makes it illegal to discriminate against anyone who's trying to vote. This was a huge win for the civil rights movement and for Martin Luther King, and it formed a political alliance between Martin Luther King Jr. and the White House, Lyndon B. Johnson's White House. Martin had hoped that this new political alliance would help with some of the initiatives he wanted to get passed. He had now shifted his focus from solely getting equality for Black Americans to fighting poverty in America for everyone. In 1967, Martin decided to speak out against the Vietnam War.
You know, America is a rich nation. And I'm afraid national administration of our country is more concerned about winning the war in Vietnam than winning the war against poverty right here in the United States.
He pretty much called America out. He was like, why are y'all spending all of this money to fund a war that nobody wants when there are people on our soil dying? Like, poverty is still an issue here. It's been 2 years and no one's done anything about the war on poverty. Martin knew that speaking out against the war would risk his relationship with Lyndon B. Johnson and his White House administration. He also received a lot of criticism from other civil rights leaders because they felt he was making a mistake by ruining his relationship with the White House to speak on what he felt was right. He felt like the war was wrong, and it was. The Vietnam War was not good for America, y'all. We looked crazy. Lyndon B. Johnson and the White House had declared Martin Luther King an enemy after this. The political alliance was severed after he made these statements, but Martin didn't care. He felt that he was doing what was right, and he stood behind what he said. In late 1967, Martin had become very pessimistic that the American government would ever do anything to really get equality for Black Americans or to solve the poverty issue. So instead of continuing to wait for the government to do something, he announces that he's planning this campaign called the Poor People's Campaign, in which he's going to take all of the nation's poor, or anyone who wants to come, all races, and they're going to go to Washington and they're going to stand outside and wait until somebody does something.
We will go there, we will demand to be heard, and we will stay until America responds.
This was going to be a multiracial working class campaign, so he was trying to unify all of the races and all of the impoverished people in the country and join together to get something done about it. This event was set to take place in the spring of 1968. out. What's not greatly publicized about Martin Luther King Jr. and what I learned from doing research for this video was that he was a womanizer, yes, but also that he was not a fan of capitalism. He was technically a socialist, and he believed that capitalism had served its purpose, that it was no longer working for this country. He believed that capitalism took necessities from the masses in order to give luxury to the classes. He began advocating for things like job guarantees, living wages, universal health care, shifting the focus from civil rights to economic equality, and not just for Black Americans, for everyone.
Now we are confronting issues that cannot be solved without costing the nation billions of dollars. Now, I think this is where we're getting our greatest resistance. They may put it on many other things, but we can't get rid of slums and poverty without it costing.
He wanted to help everyone. He wanted a redistribution of the wealth. And he was already really famous at this point. Like, he could have taken his money and gone, but he genuinely wanted to do what was right, which is very noble. Very noble guy. Except for the cheating part. Ew. When the American government and the FBI learns what Martin is planning, of course they're not happy about this. They don't want to have thousands, maybe millions of poor people in Washington, D.C. demanding help. They don't want to give out money to poor people. They don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. The Poor People's Campaign was a direct attack on capitalism, and they don't want to solve the poverty problem. They don't want to solve it. If they wanted to solve it, it'd be solved. So when they learn what Martin is planning, of course they start panicking because they know Martin has enough influence to actually pull this off. So they're like, oh God, no, God, what are we gonna do? No, this can't happen. Lyndon B. Johnson was already aware of the fact that the FBI was stalking Martin. So he asked J. Edgar Hoover to put together something that's going to stop Martin for good. Like, they need to stop this campaign from happening. It can't happen. Like, figure it out. He tells the FBI, like, do something.
Now, I want you to keep your men busy to find the central connections. But I wouldn't be a damn bit surprised that this poverty group here is not stirring up some of this. We'll dig into that very thoroughly. Okay.
J. Edgar Hoover is so excited. He's like, I've been waiting to do something about this guy. I hate this guy. He's so excited about this. He's like, yeah, I'm going to do something. So the FBI begins drafting this document in which they put together all of the shady things that they found about Martin Luther King Jr. And this is in the hopes of getting him indicted. This is the same document that historians found in 2017. Are you ready to hear what they put in this document, folks? Brace yourselves. In this document, they write about how Martin is a communist and a Marxist, and the only reason he's not honest about this in the public is because he's a minister. They write that he's had 40 plus sexual partners, and that sometimes he coerced young women into participating. The most shocking claim that they put in this document is that Martin may have been an accomplice to a sexual assault, like he was a witness to the sexual assault.
Handwritten annotations on this document alleged that King was present at the rape of a Black female parishioner by a Baltimore minister, and that he, quote, looked on and laughed.
But they claim that Martin was there when a woman was being sexually assaulted, and he didn't do anything about it. He just looked on and smiled or something. I don't know, I wasn't there. Many of the historians who have reviewed this document don't necessarily believe this happened because of how much the FBI hated him and they were literally trying to take him down. The only reason they were writing this was to try and silence him and get him indicted. So they don't necessarily believe this. And evidence of this in the audio tapes that they have, the recorded audio tapes of this happening, allegedly, those are all locked away and won't be available until 2027. So we can't actually say that this happened until we have more evidence. It also doesn't make much sense. Like, if they were listening to a sexual assault that involved Martin Luther King Jr., then why didn't they do something about it right when it happened? Like, they just also listened to this girl being assaulted and didn't do anything? If they hated him so much, why didn't they just arrest him right then and there? It doesn't really make sense, but we won't know. We have to wait and find out if it actually happened. If it did, I can't. Like, I can't. So the FBI is drafting this document, and the document was dated 3 weeks before Martin Luther King was assassinated. But before the Poor People's Campaign could take place, conveniently enough for the FBI and Lyndon B. Johnson, Martin is killed. How convenient. On April 4th, 1968, Martin is killed at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee, and the nation is devastated. Everyone's like, who could have done this? Who did this? Who did this? The FBI is eventually pressured into finding out who killed Martin Luther King Jr. because initially they didn't want to do it. After After the reputation of the FBI was at stake, J. Edgar Hoover took it seriously and they launched this full investigation on who killed Martin Luther King Jr. Eventually, they find the assassin, a man named James Earl Ray, and apparently he had all of these weapons with him and he had multiple passports and he was trying to leave the country when they found him. Those who were close to Martin were very skeptical of the FBI's investigation because they knew that Martin was being followed 24/7, and the FBI admits this. They admitted that they were surveying him all of the time. They were at all of the hotels he was at. So how did they not know this was happening? How were they not there? Were they there? You mean to tell me you guys were listening to everything that happened in his hotel? You had rooms near him at every hotel, but you didn't know that this was going to happen? You didn't know of this James Earl Ray person? How? In 1977, nearly 10 years after Martin's death, a federal judge orders the FBI to turn over all of the unethical information that they had on him. They had to give all of the audio tapes, all of the documents, and all of that is sealed until 2027. And then we can hear if... I probably won't listen. I'm not going to listen. I'm gonna skip it. I don't need to hear that. I feel like it would be like listening to a tape of my grandpa having sex. No, I'm good. The FBI was condemned for this time period. It was known as one of the darkest times in the FBI's history for the way that they harassed Martin and tried to ruin his life and the very unethical ways they got all this information. It's not okay. It's not okay. This video stressed me out. It's just so many, like, I just feel so emotionally just pulled, you know? And one way I'm like, ew, what a pig, what a womanizing pig. The other way I'm like, I have a lot of the rights that I have in this country because men like him fought and stood up for this, you know? Like, he actually did a lot. And he was at the constant threat of dying all the time. But he was a womanizing pig and he cheated on his wife. And that's not cool. That's not cool, dude. Why would you do that, dude? What the hell? But he did want economic equality for everyone, and that's pretty noble. Like, that's something that we don't have today. Maybe if Martin Luther King Jr. had achieved that, we would have had a stimulus check a long time ago. Who knows? Who knows? He was a womanizer. He was a womanizing pig. Not cool, bro. Disgusting. It's gross. It is gross. You should be ashamed. But you did do a lot of cool stuff for the nation, for everyone. This is really upsetting, you guys. I really am very, very upset by this. I do believe that if the FBI hadn't been so gross and unethical that we wouldn't have any of this information, like it just wouldn't be any of our business. But now that we do kind of have to look at him as a whole person. If anything, I've just learned that you shouldn't idolize anyone. No one's perfect. Everyone's going to disappoint you. Literally everyone. Human beings are disappointing. He wasn't perfect. I'm not perfect. Are you perfect? Probably not. I was very fascinated to learn that he was a socialist and that he was trying to get economic equality. And that is a good reason to take him out in the eyes of the American government. Let me chill. I'm not even gonna go there. I'm not gonna go there. I'm in no way implying that the American government had anything to do with this. That is not what I'm saying. But imagine if that Poor People's Campaign was able to take place. Like, imagine what that could have accomplished, maybe. Maybe if the Poor People's Campaign had taken place, we would have universal health care right now. Other first world countries have universal health care, and it's not that big a deal. For whatever reason, in America, it's just this really big deal, and I don't understand why. I don't get it. I guess we will never know, but it is interesting that they wiped that away from history. Like, what I learned about Martin Luther King Jr. in school was that he was just this civil rights leader who fought for Black American rights, not that he was this socialist leader who was fighting for economic equality for everyone. You know, they just don't talk about that. They just skip it. I don't know, you guys. I don't know how to feel after this video. I feel a lot of things. I really do. Please be sure to comment down below and let me know how you guys feel. If you learned something new, if you have something to contribute to the story, please feel free to do so. Please check out all of the links in the description box if you want to learn more, if you want to see where I got my sources from. I will list that all in the description box below. If you have nothing to contribute to the story, you can just say, hey. It really helps my videos out when you guys comment and engage and give a big thumbs up. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching this Makeup and History. Stick around and check out some of my other videos and subscribe. I love you so, so much, and I'll see you in my next one.